Hey guys, it's me again, Eric, and tonight's video is going to be all about zombie films. I'm going to delve into the past and talk about some of my favorites growing up and what the subgenre means to me in general. And so let's get started right now. First of all, let's talk about the huge elephant in the room, and those are the films of George A. Romero. A lot of people seem to believe that Dawn of the Dead is Romero's masterpiece, and then you have people in the Night of the Living Dead camp. You can put me in the smaller camp that thinks that Day of the Dead is his quintessential zombie motion picture. For me, Day of the Dead is just totally rife with tension. The underground setting really fuels a lot of animosity amongst the main characters. You got Joe Pilato's character is just a maniac. I love the way he lords over the rest of the characters down there in the mines. He's just a maniacal motherfucker, and his performance is just great, just totally stellar, and it blows away anything in Dawn of the Dead and any of the acting in Night of the Living Dead. Also, at that point in Tom Savini's career, he had really reached the zenith. I mean, just the apex of what he could do with special effects makeup. The blood is the perfect color in Day of the Dead. No more of that pastel, Crayola, you know, the fake looking red shit that he used in Dawn of the Dead. No, in Day of the Dead, you got this nice, realistic, dark red blood, and it is strewn all over. There are so many jaw-dropping gore set pieces in Day of the Dead. You know, when Joe Pilato's character gets ripped in half and they're ripping his guts out, his intestines are being strung clear along that hallway as they drag, you know, the lower half of his body down the hall. I mean, it's just vicious, and I love every second of it. When the zombies are biting off the characters' fingers and ripping the other guys. When they rip that guy's head off, when they've got him down on the ground and they're pulling his head off, and as it pulls further and further away from his torso and his scream just keeps getting higher and higher pitched, man, that blew my mind when I saw that. I saw Day of the Dead when I was like 11 years old, and I couldn't believe it. So yeah, Tom Savini's effects in Day are just mind-blowing. And, you know, as far as Dawn of the Dead is concerned, a big criticism I have with Dawn of the Dead is it's so bloated. It's very long. It doesn't really keep me engaged all the way through. The opening is brilliant. I love the opening with Goblin's music pulsating on the soundtrack, and you've got these news people in the newsrooms. They're talking about the zombie apocalypse that's going on, and everyone's flipping out, and lots of great stuff there at the beginning. And of course, you got that exploding head shotgun blast that really made a big impression on people there in the late 70s when they first saw that, no doubt. So Dawn of the Dead starts off, you know, fast and furious, but once they get in the mall and kind of get situated in there, it really slows down to a fucking crawl, and it's just kind of drags. It really does. I mean, and then when you get to the end and the biker gang shows up and they get in there, it starts to pick up and everything. And of course, there's some good scenes where the zombies are ripping people apart in Dawn of the Dead there at the end, but kind of what I mentioned before, Savini's blood mix just wasn't there yet. It really wasn't. It just didn't look that good. It was real light colored, and it just didn't have that viscous, realistic look that he'd soon come upon. His mix got better, and I think it was after he talked to Dick Smith. I'm not for certain, but I do seem to recall reading an interview with Tom Savini in an issue of Fangoria or something like that, and I think he might have said something about using Dick Smith's blood mix. And when he started using that mix, that's when he got the better color and consistency, and you know, when he did Friday the 13th, Maniac, The Prowler, The Burning, when he was doing those fucking movies, the blood looked good. It was already a vast improvement over the way it looked in Dawn of the Dead and over the way it looked in Martin. Both of those movies just have that, the color's just not there yet. What's interesting is Tom Savini worked with Alan Ormsby on Deranged, but I remember the blood looking pretty good in that movie, so maybe that was because of Alan. Maybe Alan did that blood mix. But let's get back on topic. So, Dawn of the Dead, it definitely is a classic. I'm not going to piss on Dawn of the Dead and say the movie's overrated or that it's shit or anything like that. No. It is a classic of its time, vastly influential, and, you know, spearheaded a lot of shit to come, especially, obviously, was the springboard for all of the Italian movies that would soon follow in its wake. So, Dawn of the Dead, very important film. Likewise, obviously, with the original classic Night of the Living Dead when it came out in the late 60s. So, Night and Dawn, both very important, and I won't take that away from them, but for me, Day of the Dead is where it's at. Now, I went and saw Land of the Dead when it came out in theaters. I was really excited when Land of the Dead came out because it was a George Romero zombie film in theaters with a wide release. So I went and saw it twice just to support, you know, his movie, and of course it didn't do that good at the box office. And, you know, the movie is kind of disappointing. There are some good makeup effects in Land of the Dead, but CGI crept in, so there's some CGI in it. I didn't really care for that. I like the practical makeup effects. I don't like CGI. You know, it's just not for me. Also, Dennis Hopper was in Land of the Dead, and I liked that. I thought that was pretty cool. But overall, Land of the Dead, just kind of a disappointment. An early 70s zombie movie that is just one of the greatest of all time and just holds such a special place in my heart is Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. Wow. All I want to say about that movie, well, I want to say a lot about that movie, but first of all, the atmosphere. When that movie starts, it's such a dark, moody opening, and the way the music on the soundtrack really sets the mood. It's got this very ethereal quality to it, very unearthly, and it's just the perfect. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things just starts off, boom, with a great moody opening. I love the way the zombies look in it. They have a great look. Alan Ormsby did the makeup in it, I believe, as well as playing the lead role. And a lot of people are put off by Alan Ormsby's performance. They say, you know, he hammed it up too much and, you know, just played it too much over the top and kind of became grating to the viewer. I don't think so. The first time I watched Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, I thought that Alan Ormsby's performance was really funny. I got a real kick out of him. He's just really snobby and condescending and just a prick. And I enjoyed that. Very entertaining performance from him. And then the final, when it gets to the end and the zombies descend, you know, out there on that island, when they descend upon them, just great final moments of the film, and will always stick in my mind. That movie made a big impression on me growing up. The makeup, the music, everything. It's just a really good film, and it's a classic. Like, if someone said to me, which zombie film made a bigger impact on you, Night of the Living Dead or Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things? If I had to pick between those two, I'd choose Children, no doubt. There's just something about it. It's a very special picture. When I was growing up, one thing that I really loved was when I would go, there was a video store in particular called Gemstone Video, and I'll never forget going in there, and they had a huge horror section. This was in the late 80s, early 90s, and these independent video stores out here around where I live, you know, they had big horror sections. I mean, we had, you know, big boxes all up and down the aisles, you know, clamshells, as well as all the slipcases. And I mean, these video stores had huge selections. And when I was a kid, I'm getting off on a bit of a tangent here, but it's very important to paint the picture of where I'm coming from. When I was a kid and we went to the fucking video store, it was a very special thing. And you were either there and you understand, or you weren't and you don't. And when we go into that video store, you know, and my parents or my mom, whoever I was with, would go over to the new release wall, I would go into that section that said horror, because I would get lost in it. It's like the horror section would swallow me up, and I would become immersed in looking at every cover. I mean, I would see tapes like Blood Feast and Dr. Gore and, you know, just all of this shit. And they had the most, and Gore Girls and all this kind of stuff. I was drawn to these, the Evil Dead. I was drawn to these covers, and then turning them around on the back and seeing the graphic pictures on the back. Also the warnings and pronouncements saying, you know, not for the weak of heart. You know, when you'd see Faces of Death, stuff like that sitting on the shelf. It was a mesmerizing experience, and it's something that can't be replaced nowadays. I'll never get that feeling back. No matter how hard I try, you know, nothing will ever give me this quite the same rush as feeling, you know, they use that cliche term, being a kid in a candy store. Well, that's what it was like for me when I go into the horror section of a video store. But getting back to Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, at Gemstone Video, they had the Gorgon clamshell of Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. That is one of the best covers of all time. That cover art for Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things on Gorgon Video is jaw-droppingly good. You got that hand coming out of the ground, and there's that tree, and there's nice use of purple and everything. It's just a very great drawing. And that really, you know, looking at that artwork spun a tale in my head even before I saw the movie. It told me, I was like, that's got to be a good movie. And sure enough, it was. So yeah, Children, up there. It's way up there for me in the zombie film category. And as far as Alan Ormsby and Bob Clark and Jeff Gillen are concerned, of course, Death Dream, Deranged, Black Christmas, you know, that stuff was just so great. What a great period of time when those guys were making horror films in the early 70s. You can't say enough good about those dudes and what they contributed to the horror genre. And as far as Death Dream goes, I love that movie. It's definitely a favorite of mine, but I'm not going to go talk a lot about Death Dream, because even though there's technically a zombie in it, to me, it's not a zombie film. So, you know, it's just one of those things to me. Death Dream is more than a zombie film. It's not, I wouldn't really put it in that category. It kind of similar to like House by the Cemetery has a fucking zombie in it, but I wouldn't call House by the Cemetery a zombie film. Okay, so yeah, Death Dream, great film. But let's move on a little. Some other 70s classics in the zombie realm. The Blind Dead series, great stuff, great stuff. And you know, the first two are probably technically the best overall, and most people would say that the first two in the Blind Dead series are the greatest. At least that's the general impression I get from reading what other people have to say about the series. For me, though, the first one I ever saw in the Blind Dead series was Ghost Galleon. Now, when I saw it, I rented the Super Video clamshell from a family video back in the late 90s, and that Super Video is called Horror of the Zombies. And, you know, it's fun. It's a fun little movie. I like how they're on the ship, how they're on the ocean, and it's a pretty dark and gloomy atmosphere. But then you got a lot of 70s chicks, and I kind of like the vibe of Ghost Galleon quite a bit. But then I also like Night of the Seagulls, the last in the series. You know, it has some nice seaside atmosphere going on. I don't like how they did a lot of day for night shooting. I feel that kind of pulls it down. I wish they would have done more actual night shooting on Night of the Seagulls, but it's still a great entry in the series and a good way to, you know, put a cap on it. But yeah, what a great look of the zombies in that series. Those Templar knights, you know, riding around on fucking horses, and, you know, they're blind, so they have to use their sense of hearing, and just everything about them. It was a really unique concept, so that series is really good. Another one that I really like the atmosphere of is Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, aka The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, aka Don't Open the Window. I mean, this fucking movie has a lot of alternate titles, and I really like the atmosphere of Let Sleeping Corpses Lie. Alright, now we're getting into some really gory shit now, because now we're going to talk about Lucio Fulci's classic Zombie, aka Zombie 2, aka Zombie Flesh Eaters, as it's known to all of my UK friends. And it is a classic, no doubt about it. I mean, you got some show-stopping scenes in the film. We got the infamous splinter in the eye when Olga Carleto's head is dragged towards that door and that big shard of woods there, and then the camera just keeps cutting back and forth between her getting closer and then towards that big sharp splinter sticking out there, and you're like, the first time you watch it, you're like, there's no fucking way they're gonna actually show this thing puncture her eyeball. And puncture her eyeball it does. Holy fuck, the first time I watched it, I couldn't believe that not only did it show that shard of wood go right into her eyeball, but then it shows it snap off and break in her eye, and it looks so utterly fucking spellbindingly painful. Just, you can't believe. And the first time you watch it, you're like, wow, how did they pull off that effect? I mean, that's just the feeling it leaves you with. Great stuff. When the one chick gets her throat ripped out by that iconic, you know, the zombie from the cover of all the releases, when you see him come up out of the ground and he stands up there, and of course this bitch is just standing there. She should be fucking running. If I saw that ugly motherfucker rise out of the ground in front of me, I would turn and run. You would see a trail. It'd be like in one of those fucking cartoons where you just see dust, where the person just disappears, or if there's a door, you see the fucking imprint of where their body went through the fucking door. That's what you would see if it was me. I guess she's in shock or something because she stands there, and of course he lunges down and just bites into her throat and just pulls that skin away, and it's just a moment of unbridled glory as far as the utter blood loss that begins to commence when it just pours out of her throat. I love that scene. One of the greatest things in horror there ever was. It's a transcendent moment. You know, it's up there with the scene in The Prowler where he slits the girl's throat with the bayonet in the swimming pool and he keeps pulling it back and forth and the blood keeps coming out. Well, this scene is right up there with that. I mean, Fulci had a way of just putting that camera right on blood spillage and just watching it. Fulci's camera would just be an impassive observer of the carnage. He wasn't trying to do all kinds of tricks and make the camera work be the star of the show. He wanted that blood pouring out of various bodily wounds. That was the star of the show, and he let it just sit there and let the blood spill. And that was a great moment right there in that film. And I have to point out that in addition to the gore and blood, the zombie makeup effects, the way these zombies looked in Fulci's film, really just took it to a whole new level, because before that, you know, in like Dawn of the Dead, you had these blue tinted zombies, and just the Living Dead that came before, they did not look anything like Fulci's zombies, like the work that Gennaro De Rossi did. These guys actually looked decayed and decomposed and like they had spent years rotting in the earth. And that's the effect that you get from these guys. I mean, these zombies were unique and they were scary looking. They weren't, you know, the zombies in Dawn of the Dead and in Night of the Living Dead, they're just kind of blasé. They're generic. Zombie took it to a whole new level. They wanted to make these zombies look like they meant business. These bastards looked mean and they looked putrefied, just disgusting looking, and I loved that. I have lots of fond memories of Fulci's Zombie. When I was a kid, I remember the first release of it I ever saw was the Magnum slipcase release. So it was a small box, and you know, it had that zombie on the cover, and as a kid I remember looking at that, and I mean, it makes an impression on you right away. I was like, wow, look at that, and that's scary. And I didn't see the Wizard big box release of it until I was older. I didn't even know that existed until I was in my teens. But the first release of it I remember seeing was the Magnum slipcase. So that'll probably always be my favorite, you know, as for nostalgic reasons. I was really happy when the movie started getting, you know, great treatment by companies like Anchor Bay, you know, and they put it out on DVD, and you know, it's gotten good treatment over the years. I really liked the Media Blasters special edition. I know a lot of people, you know, like to say bad shit about Media Blasters and Shriek Show, but man, I know that some of their discs have had errors and they've fucked up in certain ways, but I fucking love Shriek Show and Media Blasters, the different DVD releases they've put out. So I'm still a big fan of them, and I miss those days when you had companies like when you go into a Best Buy and there were Anchor Bays and Blue Undergrounds and Media Blasters and Code Red, and you know, and they were all over the shelves, and Elite, you know, all those old DVD companies. I mean, there are still some of these companies are still around putting stuff out, but you can't just walk into a store and see them on the shelf anymore, and I kind of miss those days. But let's get back to talking strictly about zombies, shall we? Another film that I really enjoyed from Italy is Zombie Holocaust. Now, it's also known as Dr. Butcher MD, and that is what I originally knew the movie as, was Dr. Butcher MD. I rented the Paragon VHS as a teenager from the video store, and wow, cool movie. I mean, it's just a great movie. You got some great gore in it. There's even some cannibal carnage in it. You not only had zombies, but you also had cannibals. So it's a fun movie, and I really like that one. Another one that I love even more than Zombie Holocaust would be Burial Ground, aka The Nights of Terror. Man, what a fun movie. Everyone knows the Peter Bark character in that movie. You know, it's this creepy little guy, and I guess he's supposed to be he's supposed to be like a little boy or something, but he's played by this creepy guy named Peter Bark. He just has a really weird look about him, and of course that scene where he wants to fucking touch his mom, and he's saying things to her like, I need to touch you, I need to feel you near me, and when he says, you know, it's just really funny stuff. And then of course where she takes her breasts out and she wants to fucking breastfeed him, and of course he's a zombie now, and he bites on her fucking nipple, and he just tears the end of her tit off, and then he's chewing it and the blood's coming out. What a great scene. I mean, so sleazy, so perfect for an exploitative movie like Burial Ground. And one thing, there's some really cool shit about Burial Ground I gotta talk about. The zombies look even more craggly and rotten and bizarre looking. I mean, they even top the zombies in Fulci's Zombie and the zombies in Zombie Holocaust. These Burial Ground zombies are just nasty looking and just unearthly. Like, they're very hard to even put into words how cool they look. I really like, you know, when the one couple's making out on the grass and then that one zombie comes out of the ground and he's just there looking at him, real menacing. And these zombies in Burial Ground, they use weapons. I mean, they get a hold of different implements to help do their killing. So that's another cool aspect of Burial Ground. And also Burial Ground, as I already mentioned before with the Peter Bark breast tearing scene, overall Burial Ground is a sleazy ass movie. I mean, you got some tawdry scenes at the beginning where you got chicks dressing up in like G-strings and shit, and the dude's telling her, yeah, you're my little whore, you know, shit like that. So a lot of sleaze factor in Burial Ground, and it's one that I highly recommend. If you've never seen Burial Ground, you gotta check it out. It's really funny, that scene at the beginning where the guy says to the zombies as they descend upon him, he's like, no, no, I'm your friend, or is something to that effect. The thing about Burial Ground is I was a fan of it long before it came out to DVD. I had to order the VHS off of eBay in like 1999 or 2000 because I had heard good things about the movie, but I'd never seen it available for rent. So I got the VHS, and man, was the print dark and murky. You could barely make out a lot of what was going on in that old VHS of Burial Ground, that old Vestron. So it was very eye-opening when the DVD release came out from Media Blasters, because you could finally see what the fuck was going on in every scene. They, you know, it was very revealing, and it made me appreciate the movie even more. So yeah, 2 thumbs up for Burial Ground for sure. One 70s zombie film that I know has its following, but never really did much for me, is Shockwaves, directed by Ken Wiederhorn. Now, he also went on to direct Return of the Living Dead 2, and we'll get to that in a bit. But Shockwaves just kind of left me cold, so I'm not really much of a fan of that one. One movie that made quite the impression when I was about 17, 18 years old was Zombie Lake. Now, I rented the Wizard Video Big Box, rented it from the video store, and, you know, I was extremely disappointed, suffice it to say. It has the worst excuse for zombie makeup, bar none, that I've seen in a serious zombie genre movie. From that period of time anyway, you know, you had a lot better effects going on than that. They really did not try at all. They literally just had these motherfuckers with green paint smeared on their face, and that was it. I mean, just looks terrible. It makes the zombies in Dawn of the Dead look like the greatest things ever in comparison. That's how bad. They didn't even try with the makeup in Zombie Lake. The best thing going for Zombie Lake is the nudity. It is piled on thick. You got full frontal. I mean, you got tits. You got everything. Naked girls swimming in the water for what seems like an eternity. So if you want to see lots of TNA, then by all means rent Zombie Lake. But if you're looking for zombie carnage and good makeup effects, steer clear of it, because you're not going to get that with that film. Bruno Mattei's Hell of the Living Dead, aka Night of the Zombies, is okay. It has a lot of stock footage in it, and it also uses a lot of music from other films. It takes goblin tracks from movies like Buried Alive, for instance, in some scenes. And overall, I wasn't really impressed with Hell of the Living Dead. It's just an okay movie. Now, when I first saw that movie, I saw it under the title Night of the Zombies. There's also a movie called Night of the Zombies from Joel M. Reed, the director of Bloodsucking Freaks. As far as Gates of Hell and The Beyond and House by the Cemetery are concerned, I know they all have zombies in them, but for me, I don't really classify them as zombie films. There's so much more going on in them, you know, occult aspects, supernatural shit, just, you know, all that kind of stuff. So to me, they're not zombie films in the strictest sense. So I'm not going to go in depth about Gates or Beyond or House. If you want to hear me pontificate about those films, check out my Fulci rant. Now let's talk about Dan O'Bannon's classic, Return of the Living Dead. What a great horror film. And you know, it has comedy in it, but the comedy is woven in a very nice way in the first Return of the Living Dead. In part 2, they went too far over the top and it became a total joke. But in part 1, I really always felt like the horror was the focal point. The horror was center stage and the comedy just crept in with the absurdity of the situation and certain lines that the characters would say. You know, like when she says there's 100 of those things out there, and they turn around and they're like 100? You know, and they realize that the situation is getting way out of hand, and they're all coming out of the grave and they're eating people's brains. You know, before that, with most of the zombie films, where they would eat flesh, that's just what it was. They'd rip people apart, they'd eat their internal organs, they'd eat their flesh. But in Return of the Living Dead, it was all about eating brains, and that became the mainstay of the Return of the Living Dead series. The zombies needed to eat brains to make the pain of being dead subside, to make that pain threshold go down. They needed to consume live brains from living people. You know, you got the punk soundtrack and these punks going into the cemetery, and you got Linnea Quigley dancing, you know, topless and showing her snatch. That was just classic stuff. Seeing that as a kid, you know, of course, that's going to just warp your mind. A kid of 8 years old shouldn't exactly be watching, you know, Linnea Quigley dancing naked, but there I was watching it and taking it all in. And Tarman, wow, he scared me. That freaked me out when Tarman came out in the basement, you know, and you first see him and he's all slimy and the putrescence is just dripping off of him and it's just sick. That is one of the greatest designs ever. And like I said in a video where I was talking about Creepshow, it's back and forth with me as to who the greatest zombie of all time is. Is it Tarman or is it Nathan Grantham from Creepshow? You gotta catch me on whichever day. Now, most of the time I'm gonna say Nathan because Creepshow's my favorite movie, but goddamn, Tarman is fucking epic and really scared me as a kid. I mean, he was a scary zombie. Now, in part 2, they had a Tarman in that one, but he's seen very briefly. So therefore he doesn't make as big an impression on your mind. In part 2, it's so fleeting, the Tarman type zombie that's in that one. So yeah, part 1 is just a groundbreaking horror film in my opinion. Part 2, like I said, the comedy takes center stage, and goddamn, they just went over the cliff with the fucking comedy in Return of the Living Dead 2. Just too much. There was just too much of it. It became so silly. And so, yeah, you know, it's okay. It's fun. The best thing about Return of the Living Dead 2, though, in my opinion, is the cover art. Wow. It's got great cover artwork. The design for it, it's very similar to the design for Fright Night. You know how you got the house, but then you got the vampire face up in the clouds with the fangs, and you got all this other demon type stuff in the clouds up in the sky. Well, Return of the Living Dead's artwork is similar to that. It's a similar idea with the shit going on up in the sky. What a great design. So that's what I like best about Return of the Living Dead 2. I always liked seeing that cover on the shelf as a kid. And it's a fun movie, just too much comedy, so you can't really take it seriously. Return of the Living Dead 3, I really liked that. I remember seeing that for the first time when that movie came out when I was about 10. And I always thought that that Mindy Clark, that redheaded chick in Return of the Living Dead 3, she's hot as fuck. So I always like that, and you get to see a lot of her. She, you know, and she does all the body modification, you know, she's purposely hurting herself so she won't eat her boyfriend's brains, and, you know, Brian Yuzna always has a lot of sleaze in his movies, so there's a different flair and dynamic to part 3. It's a unique installment in the series, and it's got gore, it's got some nudity, and it's just a fun little film. As far as the other entries in the Return of the Living Dead series, I don't have much to say about that shit. You know, I don't give a fuck about Rave to the Grave and shit like that, so I'm not even gonna fucking comment on that crap. Now, this video wouldn't be complete if I didn't mention Night of the Creeps. Now, obviously, it's a wonky hybrid film. It's a mix of science fiction and horror, and it's got all of these elements coming together, but I still will put it in here because there's a lot of zombie type action in it, no doubt about it. And you know, who can forget the classic cover artwork and the tagline, your date's here, but he's dead, you know, that kind of shit. When I was a kid, Night of the Creeps was a mainstay. Watched it over and over, you know, HBO ran the fuck out of Night of the Creeps. So it was an omnipresent film. It's got a lot of funny shit in it. They do the comedy just right in Night of the Creeps, in my opinion. They don't go way too silly like Return of the Living Dead 2. I like the guy that says screaming like banshees and he's laughing about it. And then of course that zombie comes around the corner and gets him. You know, those fucking black slug things crawling into people's mouths and taking them over. I love that maniac zombie, the one that welds the axe, you know, and he comes up out of the old woman's floor and then he kills her with the axe and you see the blood go on the TV screen. So that's just good stuff all around. And the director of that movie, Fred Decker, he's done a lot of good stuff in the horror genre. He's directed Tales from the Crypt episodes and just various things. So Night of the Creeps, it's a classic. Everyone fucking knows that one, no doubt. Stuart Gordon's Reanimator. What can I say? One of the greatest goddamn horror films ever made. It's just a total spectacular epic horror show. There's nothing else like it. You got the classic Jeffrey Combs character, Herbert West, and great gore makeup, great violence on display in that movie. You got all kinds of great gore. I like it when Herbert West's character comes up from behind the zombie and he's got that like that bone saw tool and he puts it right through his fucking chest and you see it come out and the blade's swirling and all that blood's coming down. Oh man, I ate that shit up as a kid. And so, you know, that's a great zombie movie right there. Reanimator, it's a classic, and everything that can be said about Reanimator has already been said. I do want to say that Barbara Crampton was so fucking hot back then. And I'll tell you, you know, she was hot as hell in Reanimator, but you gotta see her, obviously, and I'm sure most of you have in the film From Beyond. Man, when she gets in that fucking leather outfit in From Beyond, wow, Barbara Crampton, man was she fucking hot. Enough can't be said about her. I mean, she really is something else in those films. Those early Stuart Gordon films are classics for sure. Definitely Reanimator and From Beyond. Now, Dolls, I can take it or leave it with that shit. You know, it don't matter to me. But his first two horror films, man, talk about making a big impact right off the fucking bat. What a fucking, you know, twin combo you got there. That, I mean, he had a great jump in the business, that's for damn sure. I'm telling you, the 80s were a golden era for horror films. I love the 70s horror, but the 80s, I mean, wow. It's just some mind-blowing, epic masterpieces were coming out during that time. The special makeup effects were just getting better and better, and it was still all practical stuff. You had blood and organs and all kinds of great gory pyrotechnic shit going on, and it was all practical makeup. You didn't have the CGI shit yet, so it was just a really great last hurrah for the genre as far as I'm concerned, because once it got into the 90s, things started to change and it just never was the same ever again. For me, the 70s and 80s are where it's at, right? And there are where most of the greatest stuff is. Now, I love some horror from the 90s and some contemporary movies from nowadays. Every now and again, something new impresses me, but the 80s and the 70s are my two favorite decades, definitely, without a doubt. A couple other recommendations before I wind this video down. I couldn't talk about every zombie film ever made, obviously, but a couple other good ones are Nightlife. It's a very cool and fun little zombie film from the late 80s. So check out Nightlife. I like that one a lot. It's fun. It's a good one. Also, check out The Dead Pit. You can get that one. Code Red put that one out on DVD a few years back, and you know, you can still find it. The Dead Pit had a cool VHS release where it had one of those unique covers where the eyes, on the cover there's this zombie and his eyes would light up when you'd press a button on the box. So yeah, that one was always cool seeing on the video store shelves back when I was a kid. But yeah, try to get the Code Red DVD of The Dead Pit. It's got good, dark, atmospheric atmosphere, and a lot of the action takes place in a mental asylum, and it's just dark. It's got a and there's a main girl in that, and she's really hot, and it's a good one. Check out The Dead Pit for sure. I remember there was this movie called The Dead Hate the Living, and I can't remember if it came out in the late 90s or early 2000s, but I remember watching it and being unimpressed by it. It was too wink wink, nudge nudge, look, we're talking about David Warbeck, and look, we're making you know, little quips here and there. We're being self-referential. You know, that stuff gets old with me. I don't like that fucking wink wink, look how smart we are dialogue where characters in a horror movie talk about shit from other horror movies. That stuff's kind of dumb. I thought that movie was silly, and I hated the theme song. It had a terrible theme song, so I'm definitely not a fan of the movie The Dead Hate the Living. If you've ever seen that one, I don't recommend it. It's goofy shit in my opinion. But, you know, if you like it, whatever. As far as the Walking Dead series, I know a lot of people out there love that show and follow it. You know, I've watched a few episodes here and there, but it's been a few years. It's one of those things where I can't watch a show unless I'm watching them all every week and following the story. I'm not a follower of the Walking Dead series. I will say one thing about it, though. In some of the episodes I saw, I was like, wow, I can't believe the gore that they're showing in these shows on TV nowadays. It blows my fucking mind simply because here you had Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, and Rob Hedden could barely show any blood at all in that fucking movie, okay? It was an R-rated movie, and back in 1989, and they could barely get any blood past the censors, and nowadays you turn on AMC and you see people getting fucking ripped apart. That's kind of funny when you think about it. Anyway, that's enough for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about zombie movies, and I tried to cover as many notable films as I could, ones that, you know, that are stored in my memory banks and that I know a lot about, and, you know, leave me a comment. Let me know some of your favorite zombie movies. I want to hear what you guys think. And don't forget to hit that fucking like button, because I like seeing the likes on my vids. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I make new horror videos all the time. And thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you again later.